Hey there, how are you doing today? Um, well, I hope that you are enjoying the training so far, and that if you haven't received your tools yet, you should be receiving them in the next little while. So keep me posted about that. As I mentioned in my messages, if you don't receive your tools within 4 weeks, please do send me an email about that because it shouldn't take longer than that. But sometimes it can take a little bit of time for them to get packed and shipped all over the world. So, anyways, today we're delivering one of your bonus training, which is incorporating Gua Sha into your practice. So, just a couple of notes on this to get started because I have received some of your questions, and thank you for reaching out to all of those of you who did. It's always good if you're confused about something. Always remember, probably if you're wondering about something, someone else probably is too. So, never be afraid to ask questions. It's really good and it helps me because I have been teaching this and I've also been practicing this for decades. And sometimes when things become second nature to you, you forget about all the little steps along the way. And now I have tried to make this a very comprehensive course. But of course, there's always a little things. And I know that some of you have been eager to get going and get practicing. I did, delay the release of this training a little bit so that it happens around the same time that you receive your tools so that you can be fresh and get your practice going as quickly as possible. Sorry, a little coffee break there. So incorporating gua sha into practice. So there's two aspects to incorporating gua sha. One of them is when you actually apply the techniques within your treatment, which is really important because obviously timing is everything. So we'll go over that at the end. And then the first part of this is actually how do you introduce it to your clients? And this is really a very important part because, in my experience, I am a body worker and I'm also an acupuncturist. And I had these treatments done on me before I ever became a professional practitioner. And I had them done on me by Chinese medicine doctors from China, trained in China. And there was no communication. And this is my kind of beef with the traditional, I put in air quotes here, the traditional approach to gua sha. Most acupuncturists think that because they were trained in their Chinese medicine training by an acupuncturist, that the training that they have is superior. And I would argue that to a degree, because in my experience, I did also a TCM training at a college, um, but I was lucky enough to meet with teachers who were humble enough or educated enough to know that just because they were a doctor in China, that there was also an entire 3,000 years of Chinese medicine behind them that they were not taught. And the truth of the matter is that cupping and gua sha in what they're calling traditional Chinese medicine is actually modern Chinese medicine. And it was the books, all of the training was kind of revamped in the last century, really. so that acupuncture could become mainstream. I don't want to get too much into this, but all this to be said that a lot of the classical medicine, like the thousands of years of medicine, was not taught. And in the process of them trying to become mainstream medicine and to be identified in Western medicine as part of the medical system, they really dropped gua sha and cupping. So they considered gua sha and cupping folk medicine, and they didn't take it very seriously. So because of that, they didn't really deliver much training on it. So a lot of the time, acupuncturists just kind of are taught, oh yeah, just do this, da 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 da, and that's the end of it. And it's a really, really basic training. And so, what my experience has been with these practitioners, who have come from China, they're not trained in the way. I mean, that's obviously some of them have learned, cultural sensitivity and communication and all of these things now since they've been here. But a lot of the time, what happens is they don't even introduce the tool to you, the technique to you. They don't talk about the outcome. They don't talk about how it should feel. They don't talk about, um, you know, the results, what it might look like, or how you feel after, or what to do after the treatment. And the client experience is going to determine whether the client returns or whether they return and they want this technique again. Because the difference between a client, like if you perform gua sha on your client, and let's say they get some sha marks, so they have this rash, which kind of, it's like a rug rash, right, on their neck or their shoulders, or some area of their body. If you have prepared them for this and you have discussed with them that they have an area where there's a lot of tension and congestion, and that you have learned this technique, and it comes, it's a traditional medicine technique, and you've learned a modern application of it, that you have to use the language that really feels right for you. But generally speaking, if you say, I've studied this technique in depth and I practice, and I'm really finding that it's super helpful for releasing the kind of tension and pain that you have in this area of your body. And this technique, you may hear it referred to as gua sha, or it may be called scraping, or it could be called intramuscular stimulation. It could be called coining. It could be called Graston technique. You can name all the different names for it, just in case they've heard of it. Have you heard of it before? Lots of people in Hollywood are doing it. That's always something that people love to hear, is, oh, well, famous people have done it, it must be good. And then you can explain to them, sometimes it creates this rash, these marks, which can seem a little bit scary when you first look at it. It kind of looks like an injury, but it's really, what it's doing is it's releasing, the congestion and the scar tissue in the area, so that promotes circulation. It releases, some of the unnecessary fluids and intracellular waste in the area, so that the blood and the lymph can flow better in the area, and then your muscles can work better. And so when you explain it out to them and you tell them, what's happening and why this is happening, are these are capillaries that are damaged. There are already, from the injuries that you've had in the past, these are blood cells that have already left the blood vessels, and they're just kind of sitting in the intercellular area, and all of this debris, from inflammation and whatnot, is causing your pain. So this rash, it's similar to a cupping mark, but you'll see more like a track mark because I'm going in one line rather than a circle. You'll see a band of marks. Potentially, you may not. And this is why, and this is what's happening. So it's improving the flow of lymph and blood. So it's really important, after the treatment. Really, you need to drink a lot of water, and even maybe a little bit of water with salt, a little bit of electrolytes, and take it easy. And in terms of that post treatment, you can put a cool cloth on it if it feels irritated or hot. If it continues to feel irritated or hot the next morning, please contact me, reach out to me. But it should settle down. And just so you know, even though at the end of the treatment there may not be marks, they may appear later on. So don't be alarmed by that. Now, having said all of that, so this is the kind of conversation you're going to have with your client. I also have a little portable mirror that I have in my client. I got in like a dollar store, and I hold it up to them after the treatment so they can see the redness. And say, see this redness here is the reddening of the tissues from the irritation, but then this other redness comes out, which looks like little broken blood vessels, and you'll see that, and that may come up more in the next few hours. So they don't want to add anything topical to it, because if there's broken blood vessels, it might irritate or even cause an infection. So really the only thing you want to put on is just like a cool damp cloth. Ice pack is okay. It shouldn't be necessary. You don't need to scrape that hard. But if they do end up getting really irritated, they can do that, and something preferably with a natural fiber, because microfibers tend to drop a lot of particles, so that can get on the skin as well. So that's how you want to frame it up for your clients. So on that vein, that we're just talking about the marks and the effects and whatnot, one of the questions that student asked me is, where in the treatment do you fit the gua sha in? So it's a great question. And because of the potential that we're going to kind of open up those areas, we want to make sure that we're doing this at the end. So for example, now that doesn't mean all the gua sha at the end, but that means that if you are, also because a lot of the time it's not necessarily, if it's the first time you're practicing on someone, first time you're trying it on someone, it might not be planned ahead of time. It might be one of those things where you're like, oh, there's, if it's a client you've had for a while, you might be like, you know what, I think this person is good for gua sha. I'm going to do the sha test on them. Yes, they are. And then you can have this conversation at the beginning of the treatment and you go ahead. But you may just be working on someone even the first time in, and you're working away and you're like, wow, there's really a lot of locked up tension here in these shoulders. Neck and shoulders is kind of most common area where gua sha is practiced, and IT bands. Those are like number 2 areas in the body. So you may get there and just be like, yeah, you know what? I'm doing the sha test here. The tissue, it's not rebounding back. This would be a great area for gua sha. So you're going to do your massage first. So do your massage, loosen the area up. You're getting the blood and the lymph flowing. And then at the end, you're going to apply gua sha. And the reason for this is exactly the same as why you don't want your clients, putting lotions and stuff on the area, is because, these things can absorb, and then they can end up getting an irritation, and even an infection in that skin. So you do your work, do your massage, and then, and same with acupuncture, generally speaking, I do the acupuncture first, and then the gua sha comes at the end of the session. So if you're doing upper body, say you're doing upper body, and then you want to do the arms as well. So you do all of your body work on, the upper body and arms, and then you apply your gua sha, and then you may do just a little light stroking, or lymphatic work, sort of flush things through at the end. But generally speaking, you don't want to have to apply any oil. And you don't want to do much more work. Again, like a little bit of gentle palpation, palming, or something like this. But you really don't want to do a lot of rubbing over the area after you've already performed gua sha. So, sip, sip. So, depending on how you perform your treatments, I know most massage therapists start their clients facing down to start. So you may, do your warm up. I know when I practice, generally what I do, whether it's face up or face down, is I kind of do a physical assessment with my hands all through the body. And I feel, where things are stuck, where things are moving, where it seems like there's congestion in the area. So I may identify, okay, yeah, I could do some gua sha on the upper neck and shoulders. And I go along and I'm like, wow, these IT bands are really, really tight. I'm going to do some here. I'm going to do some in the lower leg. And so depending on how you work, you may do all of the body, back and legs massage, and then all of the gua sha, or you may do the upper back and then or the back, right? And then say, you know what, I'm just going to work a little bit on this area and do some scraping, some gua sha on this area. And then you go ahead and you perform it. How does it feel? Checking in with them. Okay, great. Oh, it's really looks good. How's your pain? You check in with it. And usually they have a really pretty immediate response. So, yeah, so we're working on these areas, and then you're going into maybe into like the lower back, and with the back to massage again, right? Just sort of do a little palming on that area after you finish, just to kind of it can kind of create an incorporation from the gua sha transition back into massage as well. So you can use that palming, and then you sort of continue palming along and down into the low back and into the glutes. And then you start working on your massage again. So it creates kind of a smooth transition. Or like I said, you can do all of the massage and then all of the gua sha. But usually, not always, because some people are just tight everywhere. But usually the gua sha is going to be kind of in an area, a region, right? And usually, the upper back and shoulders. So I go back into the, massaging the back or working on the back, and then say maybe I get into like the glutes area. And I'm like, whoa, baby. And this is something that's not in the training at AcuPoints, but it is a training that will be upcoming. Is then you can take this Bian Stone tool, which is that one that looks like a little Batman, and gently work into the glutes, the piriformis, and help work on sciatica. So amazing tool for that. It's also very good for working, around the traps and scapular area to release trigger points. But I will say, do be careful because it is stone and it's very, very strong. So then you may just same thing. You're working the glutes and oh wow, is that tight? Yeah. Oh yeah. How's that feel? Oh, it's good. Okay. I'm just going to apply this this little hand helper, and I'm just going to work in here a little bit deeper in this area, and you just let me know how it feels. And you get your little Beyond Stone, and you just work a little bit through releasing through the glutes and the piriformis, and along the sacral area. Oh yeah, and then again a little palpation, a little rocking, see if it's moving a little better, and how is that? Okay, great. And then you continue. And so if you're doing acupoint therapy with the tool, you're not going to create those marks. It's less important about working on the area afterwards. It's really only if you're doing the actual scraping. So then you go along and you're working, and oh my gosh, the hamstrings as well. They're totally contractured, or the IT bands, and they're so tight. And the legs are hardly even moving, and you work on them a little bit, and you're really seeing you're not getting a big response from massage. So again, you're like, okay, well, if you're happy with that, then we're gonna do this, and you put them in position, and then you go at the scraping, and so you go on like this, and yeah. So like I said, it doesn't matter whether you do all of the gua sha on the body after all of the massage, or if you kind of do a bit here and a bit here and a bit here, and and then you work through the body. But the important thing is that if you have created a rash or the marks, that you want to make sure that you don't have more massage to do after you've already created that response. Okay, so that's pretty much the approach for the body. And so in terms of the face, facial gua sha, some people like to do it at the beginning just to get the client in a really, really relaxed state. Um, and especially like acupoints on the head, that can be done at the beginning of the treatment, especially if the person has headaches or neck and shoulder pain. So you can say, I'm just going to like release some areas here and see if we can get that headache released. So that can be done really, anytime during the session. And if you look at my treatment for headaches and, working on the lower leg as well, so you may do the body and then ask about the headache. And then if there's still some lingering headache, you go in and you do some of these points on the head. Usually, not always, but usually I finish with the face. And part of the reason for that is because of the upsell approach, which we'll talk about in the next training. But also, I want my clients to float out of my treatment. So if they've, had a little bit of pain or discomfort in other parts of the treatment, I don't want them to go away and think, oh my God, like that was so uncomfortable, right? I want them to float out. So I'm going to put them, and again for the upsell. So I'm going to put them face up at the end of the treatment, and I'm going to apply the facial gua sha at the end of the treatment. Now, if you were doing a primarily facial head, neck, and shoulders, upper body, like a shorter treatment, then in that case, I may do the gua sha on the face first and then work through the head, right, and through some of the acupoints. And then I would work through the neck and the shoulders and the upper body and the arms and the hands. So in that case, I could do the facial gua sha at the beginning of the session. But generally speaking, I'm going to apply the facial gua sha at the end of the treatment so that I can really bliss them out and send them home with a very happy feeling. So that is it in terms of incorporating gua sha. I hope that answers your questions. If it doesn't, please send me an email and I will answer questions. And of course, any great questions that come in, if I know it's relevant, I'm going to add it in. I'm going to get it into the course because I do believe we're not infallible, and all of your questions are great questions. And if you have the question, someone else might be having the question, or they just haven't thought of it yet, but they still should know. So I do welcome, all of your comments and questions, and I hope this helps. And yeah, enjoy the training and happy gua sha-ing. Bye.